How would you like to accelerate your AI transformation? And today we have Jack Skeels, and he will tell us how to do this. He's a former RAND researcher, Inc. 500 entrepreneur, and author of Unmanaged. And for over a decade, Jack has helped high collaboration organizations, agencies, research groups, innovation teams fix the structural and managerial friction that quietly kills productivity. So, Jack, tell us more about how can entrepreneurs accelerate their AI transformation and what tools can be used for doing so.
AI Superwoman podcast with Lily Patrascu shares the world's most innovative AI tools and processes to go from technophobe to AI pro, attract leads, close sales, automate your business, enhance productivity, and deploy AI agents to do your work.
Oh, great. Good to meet you. And nice. Thanks for having me on the show. I think the thing, if I was to give some advice like that, would be first of all, one of the big mistakes entrepreneurs make as their organization grows is to add structure. Everyone thinks that the sort of department structure and all that sort of hierarchical stuff actually makes organizations better. And I cover this in my book in some detail. It actually doesn't even work that well in factories, but it's the way we learned how to manage. So avoid structure, avoid over managing. And the reason this ties into today's not I was going to say trend or fad for AI, but it's really the world is transforming with AI. The reason this ties in with AI that way is AI is more like a general purpose lubricant to how well your business can run. And it turns out we're doing some really cool work with a couple different organizations right now. And the more that you relax the organizational structure and make the process more adaptive, like let's just figure out what to do rather than have tightly scripted ways we operate, the more you relax that stuff, the more transformative in a positive way AI is when you implement it.
Thank you. Tell us exactly what you mean by that, because I'm looking for really practical steps that entrepreneurs can implement in their company.
Well, so one of the first things that happens is there's a syndrome, and one of my great clients from a couple of years ago, Ben Kirshner, who's now gone on to be quite famous. Ben pointed out one of his success secrets of growing from 20 people to 100 people was, in fact, that every time he thought, well, maybe I need a manager, he said, okay, I'm not going to hire a manager. What I'm going to do is figure out how the organization could do this piece of work without adding more hierarchy and control and cost to it. Okay? And he scaled amazingly. So this idea of anything you think you should do to be a manager, try the opposite. A lot of times I can tell you it works a lot better than actually trying to be, hey, I've got 5 departments and I've got 3 layers of managers, that kind of thing.
Thank you. Is that kind of tapping into the agile way of working? Tell us more about how can someone actually accelerate their AI transformation aside from not hiring a manager?
Well, there are really 3 pieces. Okay. So this is what I call structure first because I focus on structure a lot, but structure first AI transformation tips. And I just say real quickly, we did a pilot recently with a organization in London, and they achieved like stunning results. They cut their time to delivery in half. And they cut manpower costs by about 35% by actually using this techniques. 3 things. One is don't use individual tools, build a workbench. Okay. That is, build a workbench of different tools that fit together. Okay. I can talk more about the workbench if that's something you want to dig into, but let me hit the other 2 points. The second thing is, and of course, everyone needs to be educated on the workbench. The second thing I'd mentioned already, which is have what we call pod structure. And there's small teams, 5 to 10 to 20 people that are responsible for driving the business results, right? So you work cross-disciplinary, you don't get stuck in departments and all that kind of thing. And the third in it is you want to have a AI center of excellence. In other words, 1 or 2 people that are out there trying to find new tools and new techniques and the like, but they don't implement it. It is the pods, the groups of people using the workbench that implement it. Okay? And using that format as a basic framework, and it'll take you way farther. Okay. And if you're a startup, a lot of startups use design thinking and all that kind of thing. It's like that lean startup, that same sort of, like you said, agile like approach.
Thank you. Now, for companies that are a lot smaller, that don't have like those huge numbers that you mentioned in terms of a pod of 5 to 20 people, tell us how can they accelerate their AI transformation?
Yeah, I think the key these days is the one of the big things that is happening is the platform effect, right? In other words, uh, in the world of software tools, there have been a lot of different tools out there for a long time, and it's sort of, well, which tools do I want to use for my team and the like. These days, the platforms are getting stronger, and that is a bunch of tools provided by one vendor, one supplier, and the like. And I think the for a really small, 5 to 20 person organization, especially if you're at that size, the cost of trying to be strategic around AI and choose pieces and integrate them is so much higher than if it's a bigger organization, right? So look for good platform selections where you've got 6, 7, 8 tools all bundled together by a single provider, and that'll give you a lot of the integration and that kind of thing. It'll be much more cost efficient, both in terms of time cost and also dollar cost typically.
Thank you. Would you have any AI tools or AI processes that entrepreneurs should consider implementing in their company? Because I'm looking for something really implementable, someone that would listen to today's podcast would be able to say, okay, because I heard Jack today, I was able to implement this and it was able to reduce, this much time off my plate or this much, I'm looking for something really practical.
Well, that varies so much from business to business is the problem, right? I mean, so I can tell you what I'm using these days. I'm
Yes.
in love with it. Granola.ai. Okay. Granola is amazing. It's actually I didn't mean to, but it's recording what we're doing right now. And it does brilliant summaries. And one of the things I like from business development perspective is I can do a client call and I've loaded a template into it, and it fills out the template for me with all the information I need to write the statement of work. Okay. And it's literally just what used to be, me agonizing for an hour about all the things we said and how to fit them together. It's 3 minutes of editing. And I can send it back to the client. In fact, any meeting now, I tend to send the granola notes just because they're so good, and clients are like, "Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that point." So I think one of the big things is improving the way we work together, tools that do that kind of thing. And granola isn't the only one, but it's pretty darn good. And so that would be one I'd recommend definitely.
Thank you. How does Granola compare with Fireflies, Read AI, and Fathom, and some other ones that I've seen?
I haven't done, look, I'm not a tool strategist kind of person. I played with Firefly and, the native Zoom one and that kind of thing. I think it does a pretty darn good job, and it doesn't get lost as much as those other ones did, in my opinion. And the template thing is killer. Okay. Is the fact that you can get it to write into your format is really powerful, I think. You can actually build the template so that you can run that into a database too, if like a lead management system and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool.
Thank you. What other recommendations you have for someone who wants to accelerate their AI transformation?
Well, I mean, first, these are, yeah. The interesting thing, okay, about this whole thing is that almost everything you need to know is already inside the the GPTs of various sorts, right? And I think that a couple pieces I do tons of research using them, and I do a lot of writing about AI and what works well. I think that one is you've got to be using two tools at the same time, okay? And the two I like are ChatGPT because it's fun and it's friendly. It does a good job, okay. And then Gemini, which is Google's Gemini, which is really really good and rigid and all that kind of thing, but not as friendly, right? And so I'll tend to I'll sometimes even feed things from one to the other. But I think the last piece of advice on it, something I've done some writing on you can find on my LinkedIn, is the GPT tools are very dangerous in a way. If you don't know, they don't know what they don't know. They don't know when they're telling you things that they don't know or whether they're true or not. And so having multiple tools will give you a little bit of insight into that as well, because they'll because of the way their models work, they actually they have different views of the world, even though they pulled all their data from the same data kind of thing. So it's a good exercise for you as a person as well. So.
Thank you. Tell me why, for example, someone who is like an entrepreneur there tends to work with a very small team of, let's say, under 5 people. Why should they use, for example, Gemini or other AI tools or agents or anything AI related? And give us an example of why that is important versus just using, for example, just ChatGPT.
Well, look, I think at the end of the day, they're about nine. I'm about to publish something on LinkedIn, so it'll be on LinkedIn by the time you guys this podcast goes live. There are 9 different ways that AI tools actually change the way we work. Okay, and so my article will be cleverly called "The 9 Different Ways Tools Change the Way We Work." Change the way we work. But the things like said right there, like the ability to summarize, right? And so what you need to do, so great AI implementations, even in big companies, come from looking at how is it that we work right now, and where can AI use one of these 9 techniques to help us do what we do better? Okay, AI is not, and it won't be for a while, by the way, even though people say this shit all the time. AI is not about replacing human beings. It's replacing things that we do. Okay. But it's still a long ways away from just truly replacing human beings, except in trivial cases and stuff like that. I'm gonna throw one last thing in real quick. I just published something the other day called "It's Still Automation Stupid." Okay, a lot of people think that automation of various forms, which AI is just automation, is going to wipe out all kinds of roles and stuff like that. And I always point back to QuickBooks. Okay. So all of your entrepreneurs are using something like QuickBooks or a variation on it. And when that came out, people thought bookkeepers are dead. There will never be any bookkeepers after this thing comes out. And maybe accountants are dead. Okay. And there are more bookkeepers making more money and more accountants making more money. And what the tools did is that they took away the easy stuff, the stuff that wasn't worth the low value stuff, the drudge work, and they moved people up in the food chain. So now they're doing more valuable work and they're getting paid more for it as well. And so it's kind of interesting. Think of AI that way. How does AI take the boring hard parts off your plate so you can do the parts where you shine, where your brain works?
Thank you. I'm I'm still looking for some specific tips that you may have around accelerating the AI transformation. Are there any particular tools or any AI processes we could be implementing, or like anything AI related to accelerate the AI transformation in a company?
Yeah, well, I think there are a couple of things. One is, it can't be just one person doing it. Okay, if you've got if you're an entrepreneur of a 5-person company or something like that, it can't be just you deciding what the team. So get everyone into it, get everyone trying things. And so here's the sort of key tip that actually makes a difference. By the way, and we've shown this in multiple clients already now. Measure what outcomes you're trying to change. Okay. In other words, you've got to have just using tools because there are tools out there doesn't necessarily change your business. But if you say, for example, like I just said, I want to change the speed of how long it takes me to get a proposal back to a client. Why? Because the faster you get a proposal back to the client, the more likely they are to sign it, right? The longer it takes me, right? And it's not billable work. So if I'm spending time writing proposals, I'm not getting paid, right? So what I'd like to do is compress, I could say it this way, how fast can I get that? That's a metric. It's something. So when we set goals like that, metrics, and say, what's our average time between end of the conversation and the proposal going out to the client? And my target is, how do I get that down to 2 hours? Okay. 2 hours after the conversation, boom, they have something they can sign. Okay. That would change my business. Okay. But it's drive the business change by how you want to change the business. Okay. Not by choosing a tool first, but choose how you want to change your business. Okay. What think of the if only we could do X, how much better we would be as a company, how much happier our clients would be, how much more revenue we have. Think of those things, okay? And then once you choose which ones you want to focus on, then start looking at tools and figure out how to get tools to do that for you.
Thank you. So, give us some examples of three companies you've worked with where perhaps you asked them these kind of questions of what are the kinds of tasks that take them, endless amounts of hours, and then what was like their best case scenario, and how did they manage to reduce that time frame from, this many hours to minutes, perhaps in some cases. And what were the tools they used, AI tools they used to make this happen?
Yeah, I'm gonna tell. So the latest success story we have is actually with a fairly large organization. And like I said, it's talking about the work we're doing in London. Their client is a large automotive brand, and they do big advertising marketing campaigns for them. And these, this is like a new vehicle comes out, and it takes a while to get all the TV commercials and all that stuff put together. And they normally the front part of that takes about a year of reviews and creative work and all this kind of thing. And the client wanted to compress that. Said, is there a way we can do that faster? So that was our metric, okay? Is what is the time from initiation of this project to the point where we know what we're going to do for advertising and marketing, TV commercials, et cetera, okay? And usually it's 13 months, by the way. And so then the question is, then we can start saying, well, what takes time here? Okay. So we could sort of drill into it, right? And it wasn't my job to figure that out for them, but I guided them through that. And they eventually decided one of the big time wasters was every time they're going to present something to the client, they spent like 2 weeks getting ready to present it to the client. And plus they spent a couple weeks working on it. So they had this huge span. They talked to the client, and then a month later they'd talk to the client. Like the client would have forgotten what they talked about and all that kind of thing. And so actually using AI, then they found some AI tools that would generate the work fast. Okay. And we did some work talking to the client about, can we just show you work in progress rather than showing you really pretty stuff? And the compression of that, okay, cut it down to almost half the time that it used to take. So literally went from 13 months to about 6.5, 7 months in span time for that. And now they had a great work, again, I mentioned the workbench of tools. They had a great workbench of tools but we didn't dictate what they should use. We told the team, here's your goal. How would you use these tools to do that? And they solved it. Okay. And they solved it working with the client. So this is one of the big things, goal-driven approach, right? And then figure out where you can be better and figure out what the tool is to help you make yourself better.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. So it's not that you came up with the solution, you just kind of gave them a workbench of tools and then told them, okay, this is you could potentially use it for, and they kind of worked everything out themselves. Sounds very fun. Okay. And tell us about two more
Let me
case
jump.
studies and also,
Let me
yes, tell us
let me
tell
jump
us
in.
what you
I want to tell you what the biggest tool is. Okay, the biggest tool is your people. Okay, because what happened in that situation, and this is part of my philosophy, it's in my book Unmanaged up there on the bookshelf, it's that your best tool is your people. Okay. And so what we did is we said, this is your guys, your team. You guys solve this problem. Figure out which tools you need. Here are some great tools. We put them together for you, but it's up to you to figure out how to use them and make them work with you to optimize the way you work and all that kind of thing. And in fact, that was the real lubricant. Okay, if we had come in and said, use this tool for that, there's no way we would have gotten the result. Okay, it was because we put them in charge and had them figure out how to use the tool best for themselves. That changes the whole thing. And so I think have everyone involved, have your team lead. They are the best tool to help AI work.
thank you. Tell us about two more case studies of entrepreneurs or companies you've worked with where you've helped them to accelerate their AI transformation. And tell us what kind of tools you actually used to make it happen.
So I mean, you may not like this answer, but I don't actually recommend tools for all the reasons that I just said. Okay, because one is I don't know what the best tool is for what they're trying to accomplish. Okay, and so the My job is to help them do the transformation, right? And help them understand how to look at AI tools, how to look at their business. Okay. So, and this is the thing I kind of come back in a way, I apologize for this, but the question I think is kind of the wrong question. Okay. The question really should be, how are you going to make your business better with AI? In other words, the metrics, what are we going to change about our business? Second is, what are the opportunities in that thing that we want to change? Okay. And then now let's go look for tools that help us do that. Okay. So, but I don't think most organizations are doing it. Most organizations say, "Hey, this sounds like a cool tool, and let's use it and see if things get better." But and there's a lot of research out there on that right now. Is that just going out and trying AI tools doesn't create a lot. It creates some change, but not a lot of change. You can get a big change if you do a transformation-led activity rather than tool-driven activity.
Yes, I understand. But still, tell us two transformations that you have created for two different companies, and tell us the way that you made it happen.
Yeah, yeah. So I work with another small shop, and they're actually pretty tiny, 15 people, 12, 15 people or so. And they do SEO and SCM and search engine marketing. And now there are a bunch of new terms because of the AI stuff and all that kind of thing. But they were doing the two founders were trying to drive it, and they're overwhelming everyone with tools, and everyone's complaining, you got too many tools, I don't know what to do, I just want to get my job done. And so we flipped that around, just like I was saying. And others said, okay, fine, let's talk about what we're trying to accomplish. And it turns out, by the way, the funny thing is that the founders were getting over engaged with tools, okay? Because when we stopped and talked about what the key metrics are, one of their key metrics was client satisfaction. How happy are our clients? Our clients pay us every month. As long as they're happy, they keep on paying us every month. And they were trying to apply every tool to every customer all the time. They're going nuts. And actually, one of the things they decided to do was let's just focus on the customers that we need to work on, right? And so changing the way they thought about that, okay, actually changed the way everything worked for them. Okay. And they actually started picking up tools. And now each person inside of the team, it's a small team, is saying, okay, given that's what we're trying to accomplish, there's how do we keep customers as happy as we can and spend as little time doing it? Now they're choosing tools and testing them and that kind of thing. So it's and the owners aren't pushing tools down onto them anymore. You want a third one?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
They're a very, very fun company. This is one where one of the things that happens, right, is that there's a lot of information in a lot of companies, right? And the information doesn't get used because it's just a lot of information. And this company does home flipping. You know, they buy a home, remodel it, and then resell it, right? It's called flipping. And it's a very information intensive process because they do the research, they have three D videos. They tear the house apart so they know everything about it. They put it back together so they know all kinds of cool stuff about that. And then they throw the house back on the market and it's meh. It's just another house on the market, right? It's a beautiful house, but just another beautiful house. But the thing is, they put so much care and craftsmanship into all the decisions, none of that information makes it to the consumer, right? And the problem is, well, who's going to figure all that out? Well, that's a great AI application. Okay. So we're doing a lot of work with them now. And I can't say more about kind of what they're trying to do with it directly, but the idea is that AI can capture all that information about any given property and put it together in a way that a consumer, a home buyer would be like, wow, I know so much more about this property than I do any other property. And the reason why? The more a home buyer knows about a property, the lower their perception of risk, the more willing they are to buy it, and the more willing they are to pay more money for it. Okay. So literally AI, but again, we want to focus on that metric. How do I increase the probability that someone will buy the home when they look at it? And how do I increase the probability that they'll pay more for it? Okay. And so those were our two objectives, right? And so we worked backwards from that. It's been a very, very cool project. It's going to roll out in probably about a month or so. But we'll be ready for home buying season next spring and everything.
Thank you. Tell us more about the company that was doing the SEO. What changes did they make so that they meet their objectives?
Yeah, again, this is the thing about team-driven change. Okay, I don't get down in the middle of that. Okay, and nor should any leader, right? What we really want to do is a good leader manages by the numbers, right? In other words, what are the numbers that drive our business, right? And so this is the labor. So in their case, it's how much labor do we spend per customer for the relative customer satisfaction level, right? And so that's the dashboard that I have them using now. Okay. And the interesting thing is the people doing the work love it because now they know what they're trying to accomplish, right? And they know how they're getting measured. Okay. It used to be that they get measured by how much they're billing. Okay. How many hours do you charge to that client and all that kind of thing. Instead, now it's really this sort of outcome based thing. And that gives them the freedom to actually choose tools and play with tools. And hey, maybe this tool will be better. And it's fun listening to them make those have those conversations about how things are going better. But but again, that sort of top-down thing, very, very important. Manage the outcomes, not the people. Let the people self-manage.
The whole you can say blueprint of accelerating your AI transformation is about making the company and the team aware of what their real goal is, because when they figure that one out, they will basically be able to implement all the different AI processes and every AI tool that they need to choose by themselves, because normally they're not chasing the right metrics. They are chasing metrics that don't matter as much as something else that's a lot more important. That's the whole idea, right?
Yeah, I call it impact versus adoption. Okay, a lot of companies will be like, "Hey, we got this tool. Are you using it?" Okay, that's adoption. Okay, hey, you could have 100% adoption of this tool, but you may not have any impact. Okay, well, I'd rather just say, look, we're aiming at impact. Okay, if we're going to invest in AI tools and you're going to spend your time doing it, what are we trying to accomplish? What's the business impact? And then what are the tools you need to use to do that? Okay, work backwards from that, from outcomes. It's a lot easier to manage and it gets your team involved, so you don't need to solve every problem. So.
Thank you. Well, where would you say is a company normally focused on? And why would you say that their normal focus, which is, I assume, like profit and like billings and all that, why do you think that is perhaps like the wrong place where people should be focused on? And where should they be focused on instead in terms of goals and outcomes so that they
That's
can accelerate their own AI transformations?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. The problem with profit and gross revenue and all those sorts of top sort of figures, none of those actually are anything you can directly influence. Okay. And I can't tell my employees be more profitable today. Okay. Okay. I can't, and I may be able to tell a salesperson sell more, but that doesn't really change anything. I need to change how we sell, what we sell, all those sorts of things. So the ways we classically measure a company really aren't things, they're not management metrics, okay? They're financial metrics. Okay. And this is one of the big things, it's sort of an MBA program kind of thing, is there's financial accounting, there's managerial accounting. Managerial accounting focuses on the things that actually make the business better. Client satisfaction, okay? That's a metric that actually, if clients are happy, they stay. If clients are happy, they pay more money. Okay. So having retaining clients and all that kind of thing, you can say, I want high client retention. No, you actually want high client satisfaction. That leads to high client retention. So getting into, and that's one of the things I do, I'm a specialist in it, is what are the managerial metrics we should be using that will both guide the organization well, but also help guide transformation?
Thank you. So, what are the managerial outcomes that should a company look at?
Sure, I'll give you a couple. There are a bunch. It varies from company to company depending on how you operate, right? Okay, I've beaten the customer satisfaction one to death, so I won't even mention that again. One of the ones is how productive are people? Okay, and this is not measured in output, but it's actually we ask the people doing the work, how productive do you feel? Okay. Because if people really feel like they're being productive, they have a lot of time to focus on their work and they're getting a lot of work done, okay, then that says that the engine of the company is running well, right? Okay. Now, this isn't the same. Again, the financial metric might be billable hours. Okay. It might be utilization or something like that, but that doesn't tell you about productivity. Okay. That just tells you whether people are working, not how well they're working. So one big one is that we call productive flow. Another one is understanding. How well do people understand what they're being asked to do? Because if people don't understand what they're being asked to do, then they do it wrong, or they require a lot of support and the like. And it helps expose for us, are we struggling in terms of making sure people both understand the work they're doing, and also are we having trouble giving people time to get that work done? Okay. And those are two key parts. I talk again, this is in the book as well. Those are two things. When you focus on those as metrics, how do we get people more productive time? How do we make sure everyone understands everything? Then all of a sudden your business starts running better. Those are examples of those aren't AI based, okay, but those are sort of core managerial metrics.
Thank you. And did you find that getting the team focused on managerial outcomes rather than profit, does that actually work in terms of actually leading to a more profitable, more streamlined business?
Yeah, look, if your people are being more productive, okay, then you're making more money. Okay. If your people understand the work they're doing, then they're doing less rework. Okay. We have this I worked with over 200 organizations doing these techniques. And we had one shop in Florida where it was a 40-person shop or something like that, a development shop, a software development shop. And they used to have the rework rate, how much time they spent redoing things that they did wrong the first time. They would write off about a little bit under $1 million a year, okay, worth of rework. Okay. And I ran into the CEO a couple of years after we worked with him. I never did find out until he told me this. He said, "Oh yeah, that's a four-figure number now." Okay. So they went from big six-figure number to a small four-figure number just by making sure people understand the work well and have plenty of time to get it done. Okay. And that's dropping almost $1 million to the bottom line. So that we see that all the time. Yeah.
Thank you. And did you find that, for example, getting people not focused on the profit, but focused on the managerial outcomes actually led to more profit because of what you just said? And did you find that actually the people that continued to focus on profit, because it doesn't make a lot of sense, you know? I mean, on the one hand, it does what you just said makes a lot of sense, but I would think still that if I'm focused on making profit, that I would actually make more profit. Isn't that the thing that would make a lot of
Uh,
sense?
there, there's there's no single action I can take to make more profit if I'm a worker. Okay. I go over to one of my people. I say, "Could you make more profit today?" Okay. There's no action left in that conversation. Okay. Well, how can they make more profit? Okay? It's not a lever. It's what's called a dependent variable to be really technical about it, right? Okay. The only things we can influence are independent variables. So those are things. So profit is driven by a lot of different things. Okay. And it's only by talking about those. So profit is driven by how many hours people have to spend on a piece of work relative to how many hours they should spend on the piece of work. Okay. So if they can spend less hours on the piece of work without doing rework, okay, then that will lead to more profit. Okay, what's it take to do that? It takes, well, we've done the research to do that. What it takes to do this, make sure people really understand the work well and that they have time to focus on the work and get it done. Those two things make the work get done faster. Work getting done faster makes happier clients. Oh, there you go, client satisfaction again. But it also means less cost for delivery of the work, less rework.
Thank you. Now, imagine that you're the team you've coached, or let's say you started working with as a consultant, they understand that they are doing all this rework and they have all these flaws that they have to fix. Who is to say that actually they will be able to choose the right AI tools or AI processes or AI agents or other stuff to actually get them to solve that issue?
Well, but the funny thing is, I used to encounter that a lot. Okay, that managers felt that they were the only ones who could design a process, right? But what we forget is that every Saturday morning, everybody wakes up and designs their whole weekend, right? And here's what I'm going to do. Here are the steps I need to do. We're all good process people, right? And we're all good at making choices. We spend our lives making choices. The idea that because I became a manager means that I'm somehow massively superior at making these decisions is a lie, okay? It's a flat out lie. It's been shown by the research. We've shown it empirically with hundreds of companies now. The thing that makes your organization better is believing that your people can do that and challenging them. All of them want to be able to do that, to make good choices, to try out tools, to get the tools to fit the right way for the work they're doing, all those sorts of things. The idea that that's a manager only decision is what makes businesses suboptimal. It's why managing, so my book is called Unmanaged, okay? Unmanaged organizations run better than overmanaged organizations.
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can connect with you.
Find me on LinkedIn. It's the best place. We just rebranded from my old company to now we're called Better Company. But connect with me on LinkedIn. Would love to hear your questions, comments on this podcast as well, and all the great questions Lily has asked. It's just I'm blown away. So thank you very much for the great job on the interview, Lily.
Follow me for more AI productivity tools.